Hace 3 meses que los extranjeros llegaron a nuestra hermosa playa, en la tierra caliente. Vinieron del este a través del mar, en sus enormes casas flotantes de madera, con tela amarrada a unos palos altos que parecen nubes a la distancia, soplados por el dios del viento, Quetzalcoatl, trayendo consigo a sus extraños animales. Montan a sus caballos valientes que son tan fuertes y rápidos que podrían atropellarme y matarme sin preámbulos. Tienen 4 patas largas y musculosas, como las de ninguna bestia que haya visto antes. Parecen venados sin cuernos, pero poseen cabezas más alargadas con mandíbulas amplias que podrían comerme de una sola mordida. Algunos son blancos, otros son cafés, otros negros y uno castaño oscuro. Su pelo me parece muy fino y suave. La verdad es que me fascinan. Me llaman la atención de manera desmesurada, pero los tengo mucho respeto. También los extranjeros trajeron perros peludos y grandes. Los ladridos de estos animales son tan fuertes y penetrantes que traspasan mi alma. Parecen bestias de otro mundo. ¿Qué digo? Es verdad, estas son bestias de otro mundo, tan diferentes a nuestros pequeños perros pelones, no tan listos como los suyos, que atacan a la misma orden de su amo, pudiendo despedazarnos en un parpadeo. So there were several indigenous gods or deities, entities, whatever you want to call it, they believed in. And so instead of mentioning all of them, I decided to focus on Quetzalcoatl and the other most important one, which is Huitzilopochtli. Huitzilopochtli was the war god and the defender of the sun. So the Aztecs, in their mind, if they didn't do the sacrifices every morning, the sun would not rise up. Huitzilopochtli had to defeat the evil forces of night so the sun would come up every morning. So right now I'm going to read to you a scene about how they did the sacrifices. Todo está listo para la ceremonia. El calor es intenso y el sol más centellante que nunca. Los cuerpos de los prisioneros son subidos uno a la torre. Parecen bañados de aceite de cacao, pero no es más del sudor que les corre por los cuerpos, de los cuales se desprenden grandes gotas de sudor en cada paso agónico, que dan en esa lenta subida que se hace interna hacia la piedra de sacrificio. 2 de los sacerdotes le sostienen los brazos de la víctima. Los otros 2 le agarran las piernas y se las extienden, mientras el sumo sacerdote aprieta el cuchillo con las 2 manos, lo levanta, hace una pausa por unos segundos y con un movimiento rápido de un relámpago lo pecho, abriendo una profunda herida entre la parte superior de las costillas y hacia abajo hasta el vientre, y saca el corazón todavía palpitante. Lo levanta hacia el sol, ofreciendo a los dioses el agua divina. Entonces entrega el corazón a otro sacerdote que lo mete en un brasero humeante. Se detiene un poquito más, como si estuviera esperando la aprobación de Huitzilopochtli, y corta el cuello de la víctima para remenar la cabeza y colocarla en el estante de las calaveras.
Pues será un día triunfal para nuestro Señor, que nos está llevando delante de sus tipos de visitas. Trae a mí esas pesadillas, que en el principio no parecen sino de errores, con el único afán de prepararme para el futuro, y así poder seguir tener conocimiento de de lo que acontecerá.
Mi señor, nuestra historia complacerla con una excursión por toda la ciudad, como usted ha pedido.
Gran honor que vuestra merced me hace, el cual acepto con toda voluntad. Y ante este hecho tan notorio, os agradezco en el nombre de nuestra majestad, el Carlos V. Me atrevo a deciros que ese momento es como de profecía, y esas palabras como verdad clara. He estado listo para ese momento desde que me libré de la matriz de mi madre. Señor abogado, para preparar mi caballo, decirle a mis capitanes y la tierra que urjo de sus presencias a lo sumo.
So then the excursion of Tenochtitlan began. The city was 5 square miles in the middle of a lake, Lake Texcoco. There were 3 bridges that came to the mainland. Along one of the bridges, an aqueduct, water ran in an aqueduct that came from, fresh water came from the forest of Chapultepec into the city. In every household there was a fountain in the middle of the house with fresh water. There were canals running through the city just like Venice. So that's how people went through the city in canoes. In the middle of the city was the pyramid where they had the temples of the main gods, Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc, the god of rain. On the outskirts of the city were the chinampas, and this is where the poor people lived, to take care of the floating gardens called chinampas. They had the markets on the outskirts of the city as well, so the strangers wouldn't mix with the most important people who lived in the middle of the city, like the priest and the government. The city was extremely clean. It was swept by 1,000 men every day. All the cities were, every building was totally white and clean. This book was also my master's thesis at San Jose State, which I began when I was going for my bachelor's degree, actually. When a Profesora Zapata, asked me to do a comparison between 2 books, Las Cartas de Relación, which were the 5 letters that Hernán Cortés wrote to the King of Spain during the conquest, to La Verdadera Historia de la Conquista de Nueva España, which is written by one of Cortés's soldiers, Bernal Díaz del Castillo. Quite a few differences between the 2 books. At the beginning, Bernal Díaz del Castillo thought that what he was writing wasn't really valuable because he didn't have a formal education. Was her Cortés to law school, and so he was pretty persuasive in his arguments, but didn't tell the whole truth. In Bernal Díaz del Castillo's version, he talks about the 118 battles that took place to take over Mexico. So I cut that down, otherwise it would just be all violence and blood and guts. So I had to cut that down to a few battles. And Bernal Díaz del Castillo also mentions a very important person, La Malinche, which was Cortés's lover and interpreter. Without her, the conquest wouldn't have happened either. She knew all the indigenous languages, and so she was able to interpret for Cortés and help Cortés make allies, especially amongst the Tlaxcaltecas, which were a tribe that refused to do the Las Guerras Floridas, the Flower Wars, which the Aztecs basically forced people to do. And the objective was not to kill your opponent, but to capture him and take him to the stone of sacrifice. And they also refused to pay 20% taxes on crops, less than we pay. They refused to do that, and so that's why Cortés was easily able to make allies with them. So I returned for my master's, and the same teacher that I began the story with for my bachelor's was still there, and she's the one that helped me publish it for my thesis. A thesis, master's thesis, is usually something boring and long, like